George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
It's a blizzard, all right, and it's very, very white. Elon Musk, who wants to flood the United States with Indians with H-1B visas, ain't very keen on Pakistanis, or what he thinks is Pakistanis. I wonder what the difference between Indians and Pakistanis might be for Mr. Elon Musk, who called the Prime Minister of Britain the rape chieftain of the country, and called a Minister of State in the British government a rape and genocide apologist. She is actually, mainly in Gaza, but then so is Elon Musk. And then, to put a tin hat on it, Elon today called for the overthrow of Nigel Farage, whom he offered $100 million just a couple of weeks ago. Whoa, it's snow time. Stay with me, I'll be right back.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows, the only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows, with George Galloway. The world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Who says the special relationship is dead? A member of the American government, which takes office in a few days' time, has spent the entire week creating havoc in the British political system. A deluge of racist and Islamophobic filth has been unleashed by a member of the United States government. Now, it's not about race, because I don't even know what race Elon Musk is. I know he's a product of apartheid South Africa. Maybe those habits die hard. But it's not that he's against brown people. He can't be, because as Steve Bannon pointed out most pungently over the last couple of weeks, Elon Musk wants to flood Silicon Valley with Indians, $9 an hour Indians, admittedly. He wants to put them up in multi-occupation flats. He wants them doing the software for Silicon Valley, for the big tech industry. So he's not against brown people per se, but boy, does he have a bone in his throat about what he calls Pakistanis. The proximate reason for the resurfacing of an issue which I have been leading on for years is the decision by Elon Musk to open the floodgates, to turn on the algorithms, and to unleash a racist tide of filth, the likes of which I have never seen in getting on for 20 years on Twitter. Mr. Musk paid me $154 for December because of my prodigious, nearly 100 million views worth of tweets. He's very generous that way. God knows what he's going to pay me in January, though, because I have spent day after day, almost every day of this year, batting away a tide of such people as I never knew existed. Some of them are in Pennsylvania. Have you not got a mass shooting to take care of, to fix your attention on, kids being massacred in schools, in malls, in theatres, on parades, at sports games? I mean, why? What first attracted you, Mr. Pennsylvania, to the plight 10 years ago of poor working class English girls being cruelly sexually exploited by men, in the case of Rotherham and in Rochdale, often men of South Asian descent, Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans. But in the rest of the country, i.e. 89% of all convictions for sexual abuse of children, 89% were white English people, but they don't seem to have caught the attention of Pennsylvania quite so much. I just blocked somebody from the Aryan front. Every Nazi, fascist, racist, Muslim-hating piece of human filth has been unleashed and motivated by Elon Musk as a matter of deliberate policy. He is the one that, for whatever reason, and I'd be interested in knowing exactly what that reason is. Was it diversionary? Is it look over there? Because Bannon's punches on his H-1B visa maladroitness was beginning to cut through in the public? Is it to soften up the public for some crime that Trump is about to commit when he takes office against, well, I don't know, maybe a Muslim country, or maybe two? I don't know the reason. What I do know is that Elon Musk is either in the middle of a nervous breakdown, or he is abusing the extraordinary power that he paid $44 billion for, although he's just sold 5% of the company to, what's their name again? BlackRock, that's it. He has decided that he's going for bust. He doesn't want to just work Donald Trump from the back or with his hand up his rectum. No. Elon Musk wants to run British politics too. Now, I assumed that this was all being done as part, kind of down payment on the $100 million he promised to donate into British politics, quite illegally, by the way. He would have had to find some powerful subterfuge to do that. Foreign funding of British political parties not being allowed. You know what I mean? He was going to give Nigel Farage's party $100 million just 2 weeks ago. Today, he called for Farage to be removed as the leader of the Reform Party in Britain. He's not making any bones about who he thinks should replace Nigel Farage. The jailbird, the convict, the multiply imprisoned, multiply named, little jackbooter, now going by the name as prisoner Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, changed it to Tommy so he could appear more proletarian. Know what I mean? Has been arrested in Canada as an illegal immigrant, is funded by the Israel lobby in the United States and in Britain, and whose sole purpose is to whip up dangerous currents of hatred against Britain's Muslim population. Although again, I stress this point, the kind of people who follow Tommy Robinson and now Elon Musk don't know the difference between a Pakistani and a Bangladeshi or an Indian. Sikhs in turbans are regularly beaten up by the brown shirts under the power of these Gauleiters because, hey, they look like Muslims, don't they? The hatred of Tommy Robinson for Muslims is, however, very long established. He's in prison now, not for blowing any whistles, not for highlighting any rape gangs. He's in prison because he falsely accused a tiny little Syrian refugee boy, a schoolboy, of heinous crimes, which turned out to be the very opposite of the truth. And substantial damages were were ordered by the British courts against Robinson, that he had to pay this defenseless little Syrian refugee boy. And he didn't pay it. he went bankrupt, and then he repeated, not once but multiple times, exactly the false allegations that he had made against this little boy and had been found guilty of defamation over. So he was sent to prison for contempt of court. Maybe Elon Musk digs contempt of court. Maybe he's in favor of beating up little Syrian refugee boys. Actually, on the evidence of the last few days, I'd say it was pretty certain that he was. Unless the Syrian refugee boy could grow up into, I don't know, a computer kind of guy, then maybe Elon would bring him in on $9 an hour to program big tech. Now, Elon Musk's call for Farage to be removed as the leader of reform after a dazzlingly successful period for Farage is a very considerable setback. It has split, as one of Robinson's supporters said on Twitter, our movement. The truth be told, our movement, their movement are one and the same. Musk and Robinson and Farage are merely cheeks of the same arse. Their movement of racial exclusivism, Zionism, their movement of hatred of the other, unless it's a $9 an hour, Indian in Silicon Valley, are the surf that they intend to wave, they intend to surf all the way to power in multiple countries. Meloni is in the White House right now, or rather at Mar-a-Lago, the summer White House of Donald Trump. She is, of course, the heir to Mussolini. No doubt some plans are being hatched for similar waves of xenophobia, of chauvinism, of racism, and of hatred of Muslims. Now, it may be that the biggest lesson to be drawn from the last week is this: the centre cannot hold. Labour, the Labour government, is so gutless, so compromised by its own crimes against the people that they zipped up their mouth. A member of the American government is calling the British Prime Minister the chief organiser of rape in England. A member of the American government is calling Jess Phillips, a member of the British government, a minister of state, a rape and genocide denier. And Labour could not defend her. Labour could not defend Keir Starmer. They staged Sturm as a member of a foreign government launched, if you'll forgive the words, a jihad against them, because they know that in a popularity contest, not only Farage, maybe even Robinson, and definitely Elon Musk, is much more popular than them. The centre is dead in Britain, in France, in Germany, and in the United States of America. Such is the hegemony of the populist right, they're all tearing lumps out of each other to establish who will be the top dog on the right. The lesson I draw from it is that if Labour cannot, will not stand up to the racists, the Islamophobes, if Labour will not stand up for the British citizens of colour, we will. I will. I am the protector of Britain's minority ethnic communities. And I am the hammer of paedophiles, the hammer of groomers. It is my party that has on the order paper for the next meeting of the Rochdale Borough Council a motion for an independent public inquiry into the grooming scandal and into its cover-up, because it was covered up by politicians who are still in power today, by council officials who are still in power today. And some of them have even been promoted upwards. Most of the groomers went to jail. The rest of them need to go to jail. And the independent public inquiry must tell us why they did not. But none of the politicians who covered it up have gone to jail, and all of them need to go to jail. So some ask, why am I defending Britain's South Asian communities whilst going after, as I did in my speeches in Parliament? In just 6 months, I did more on the grooming scandal in Rochdale than any other politician has ever done. Is there not a contradiction there? No. The difference is this. We defend, protect, and seek justice for the victims. The others are blinded by race and by religion. Well, it's my duty, you see, to stand up for any section of the community that has been abandoned by the rest of the political class. And nobody wants to stand up for Britain's ethnic minority communities. So I will have to do so myself, if necessary, but not unless you join me, and we can be a very big and powerful army indeed. So far, Mr. Musk, but no further. We won't put up with you anymore. We won't put up with you algorithmically strangling anyone who stands up to your friend Netanyahu's multiple crimes, to genocide. We will not put up with being silenced. We will not put up with being shadow banned. We will not pay you money so that you can choke us. We're going to call you out for what you quite evidently are. And that, in terms of our poll this evening, is villain. You are a villain. And now I've got Nigel Farage on my side on that. Now I've got Keir Starmer on my side on that. In January, February, March, I don't know when, you and I will be facing off in front of a jury in the Dublin High Court. Let's see what they think of you and your conduct, Mr. Musk. I am stood where I have always stood. I stand up for the underdog. If a crowd of bullies start torturing people just because of what they are, as is happening right now in Syria, in the streets, in the houses, in the basements, these people who are torturing and murdering people because they're Christians, because they're Alawites, because they're in a different part of a different current of the same religion as the bullies, I stand with the underdog, now and always. There's only one last thing I want to say. My prediction that the war in Ukraine was very rapidly coming to an end is being proved hourly, not daily, but hourly. The advance of the Russian forces in Ukraine is such that it must only be a matter of weeks before the recapture of Odessa, the recapture of Kharkov, the recapture of everything east of the river Dnieper, and the recapture of the whole coastline of Ukraine. And so if Donald Trump is going to bring this war to an end, and if a state of any kind of Ukraine is going to continue to exist after the 20th of January, Mr. Trump, you better make it the first item on your agenda. We'll be talking about all of these things with two really great guests tonight on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. I defy anyone to contradict the point that I just made, that every person alive today was born of woman. So why would we say that the people in the labor wards, in the maternity units, are people who are giving birth? Why can't we say women? Why can't we say mothers? Why can't we say women who are breastfeeding, mothers who are breastfeeding? Why do we need to say people who are chest feeding? All of these words, and indeed all of the trend that you say you dissociate yourself from, of transgenderism, transmania, I call it, are all taking rights away from women.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Okay, here's the poll this evening. Is Elon Musk hero or villain? You can answer on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my Twitter, my X, the YouTube community poll, which is where huge number of people have already voted, or the YouTube stream. If you're watching on my YouTube stream, please subscribe to the channel, like the show, and share it with all of your friends and contacts. Is Elon Musk hero or villain? Well, it's a close run thing on Twitter, not anywhere else. Now, if you want to call the show, it's toll free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in the United Kingdom and Ireland, 08081 965522. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Now, Kim Iversen is one of my favorite guests, actually. She's the host of her own show, The Kim Iversen Show, which is a must-watch. And I'm glad to say she joins us now. Kim, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. Oscar Wilde famously said that we were two countries divided by a common language. We appear to be in a situation now where the United States elite is seeking to take over British politics. Perhaps we won't be two countries divided by a common language for much longer. What do you know about the latest wave of Elon Musk news? He was being pulverized by Steve Bannon over immigration just a week or so ago, and now he's accusing the British government of being the worst criminals one could possibly imagine, and at the root of it is Asian immigration. Go figure.
Yeah, he's certainly setting up X to be banned in the UK, isn't he? I mean, that's what it's looking like. It's going to be considered foreign meddling. And I would imagine that the governments throughout Europe are going to say, hey, wait a minute, we don't want a billionaire who controls an app, make sure that everybody on the app can see his tweets in particular. Of course, he amplifies his own. And there's a possibility that a lot of governments throughout Europe are going to say, we don't want this type of interference. This is election meddling, and we've got to ban X in our countries. So, which would be a terrible thing. It would be, I'm totally against censorship. I don't think that these apps should be banned, but I understand. But I think it goes both ways, I suppose. If you're a government that's going to ban a bunch of Russian shows and channels and you say that it's because of election interference or misinformation, then why wouldn't Elon Musk and X be next in line for that? Especially when he's saying things like what he just tweeted out, Starmer must go. He's a national embarrassment. And he's been saying these types of things over the last couple of days. He's an American citizen. He's not a British citizen. So why is he so aggressively going after Starmer? Why is he so aggressively trying to change UK politics? I don't know. I mean, it seems like he just wants X to be banned, I suppose.
I'm entirely opposed to banning any of these platforms. I'm totally opposed to the banning of Elon Musk. He is, of course, a member of a foreign government, not just an American citizen. He's about to be a member of Donald Trump's government. And in every picture that I see now, including with Meloni in Mar-a-Lago today, Musk is alongside Donald Trump. So these are unfriendly acts against the state of Britain, not just the deeply unpopular Prime Minister, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, completely. I don't know I don't know a lot about how your political system works over there, but he is calling for new elections. And one question that I've had is, can you even do that? Is that something that you're able to do in UK politics? Is he calling for something that has never been done before, or is he calling for a political procedure that can be done? And the fact that he's using and amplifying his voice in order to get people motivated towards that, I mean, that should be, I mean, again, I'm with you. I don't like the banning of any of these entities or platforms, but they are banning them. And Musk, just from a business strategy perspective, I would imagine everybody at X on the board should be saying, shut up. I mean, you're going to get us banned all throughout Europe.
Somebody needs to take his phone away. Now, Kim, it's only a few days until the return of the Orange Man. How are people feeling about it stateside? Is there a bit of excitement? I mean, I'm quite excited about it myself. Even though it might be worse, at least it will be different.
Yeah, I think, it's been interesting to see we're not seeing the hysteria that we saw in 2016, nor the hysteria of 2020 when people thought Trump would return or stay in the White House. So it just seems like people that voted against him, that were not pro-Trump, they've just kind of said, oh, well, I mean, so the good news is we're not seeing that sort of hysteria. We're not seeing people freak out. They're just saying, oh, well, it is what it is. I think that for the Trumpers, it's a mixed feeling. So there are, of course, those who are diehards who are always going to be excited, but there's a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump. Like the state where I'm in California, he gained, surprisingly, back in 2016, he got about 30% of the vote in California. In 2020, it went up to about 35%. This time around, he got about 40%. And that was after a lot of conservatives left the state for places like Florida, Texas, and Idaho. So we had a mass, I don't know, what's the proper term? It's not immigration, but exodus, I suppose, of a bunch of conservatives.
Relocation.
And yet he still got 40%. Yeah, and he still got 40% in the state of California. That's a lot of people that were not major Trump supporters, but they definitely wanted something different. And I think amongst that crowd, they're kind of thinking, I don't know, we'll see. Now that he's gotten a lot of Adelson money and he's super pro-Israel. We also see that Elon Musk was the largest donor this political cycle, donating over $250 million to the Trump campaign. And we see now the effect that he's having, that when you spend that much money on helping elect somebody really in the home stretch of the election, you get a seat at the table, a pretty prominent seat. I mean, he's taking a much more prominent seat than even J.D. Vance at this point, and he seems to be more influential than even the vice president-elect. So I think a lot of people are skeptical. They're wondering what is, when the Democrats start calling Elon Musk President Musk, and they're saying it sort of like, oh, President Musk, I think a lot of people are actually kind of wondering, even if they're not Democrats and saying things like that, they're still kind of wondering what sort of influence is Musk going to have on the administration. And we didn't vote for Musk. We voted for Donald Trump. That's who we elected.
Yeah, I mean, Musk couldn't run as he's not an American citizen, but I reckon that juxtaposition, I didn't know it was as much as that he had given, but the juxtaposition of having given that, being at the table, at the right hand, rather than Vance, rather than Donald Trump Jr., and owning Twitter, that makes Elon Musk pretty much the most powerful man in the world. Who will really be running things? The aging Donald Trump or the thrusting Mr. Musk?
Yeah, I think that the H-1B visa conversation brought that out. Trump was adamantly against the H-1B visa program here in the United States in 2016. He limited it. There were fewer that were issued. Now suddenly Elon Musk says, wait a minute, we want all of these immigrants coming in. And Trump now says, yeah, it's a great program. We want these people. So clearly Elon has a lot of power there. And that is causing people some real alarm, especially now that Elon Musk is talking about censorship. He's framing it in we're going to promote positive content and de-promote negative content. Who gets to decide what's positive and negative? He's going to decide, because he's become so staunchly pro-Israel ever since his pilgrimage to Israel after they threatened to basically remove all the advertising from X and collapse the entity he purchased for billions of dollars. He suddenly is staunchly pro-Israel. So is he going to say pro-Israel content is positive, anti-Israel content is negative, pro-H-1B visa is positive, and anti is negative? I mean, who gets to decide what is positive content, what is negative content? And that is, people voted Donald Trump in because of censorship that was going on with Democrats. They don't want the censorship. And now Elon Musk is framing it in a new way. So I think people are getting a lot of what they were. The MAGA America First crowd are not getting what they voted for, what they've supported Donald Trump with, the reasons they've supported Trump. Now, instead, they're getting this sort of interloper, this newcomer who suddenly woke up and decided he was pro-Donald Trump in September, October, it was after the assassination attempt. So it was after July. Suddenly this interloper comes in and says MAGA, and he's not really MAGA at all. So that is, I think, causing a lot of the MAGA crowd to spin in circles. It's going to be very divisive. We're going to see the MAGA crowd split up. And then others are saying, well, maybe that's what Musk was trying to do. Maybe he's a plant and a project to dismantle the MAGA movement.
Yeah, maybe it was a night of the long knives. Those who know the history of German nationalism may want to reflect on that. The big news on New Year's Day that we, in this side of the pond, woke up to was the twin terrorist events in New Orleans and in Las Vegas. Although they don't seem to have been connected, or at least that's what the FBI says, it's pretty much of a stretch that two soldiers from the same camp, formerly Fort Bragg, now Camp Liberty, rented cars from the same company, 2,000 miles apart, and in one case blew themselves up, and in the other case murdered at least 15 people with serious injury to scores of people. One of them quite a prominent British citizen, connected to Buckingham Palace, connected to the royal family. It was mass murder. And it was carried out, it would seem, under the flag of ISIS, even though the flag of ISIS concerned was hung upside down by the terrorist. An odd thing to do if you believed you were on a suicide mission, as he must have done. And in the case of the Las Vegas event, a serving sergeant in the U.S. Special Forces rents a Tesla Cybertruck and blows himself up outside a Trump hotel. What can you tell us about that, Kim?
While these events certainly don't make sense, I think it's also maybe they are connected. They're trying to claim that they're not connected because they're so fervently trying to paint the New Orleans terrorist attack as an ISIS attack. There are some real inconsistencies with that one. For one, we've never seen any images or videos of the ISIS flag flying during the attack or before the attack. There was no flag, or there was something else on the pole, but in the videos of the truck driving really fast, we're not seeing an ISIS flag. There's no imagery of this. They then told us there was an ISIS flag. They show us a picture of the truck with the pole, what looks like not a flag actually on the pole, but it actually looks like a jacket hanging on the pole. And then suddenly there's these photos that emerge of the upside down ISIS flag attached to the pole on the ground, and law enforcement's taking photographs of this. Another thing that's really strange about that case, the thing that stood out to me the most that makes this smell staged completely, is they allowed a journalist, a very pro-Israel, extreme Zionist journalist, the very day or two after, go into the perpetrator's home, apparently, and do a tour. I have never seen anything like this ever in my life. I've never seen a journalist get to do a walkthrough, contaminating evidence, showing the perpetrator's home. We don't get even manifestos for weeks later. We don't get a lot of information for weeks later, months later, if ever we get this sort of information. But suddenly, a journalist who happens to be extremely pro-Israel, extreme Zionist, gets to do a walkthrough of the guy's apartment where she gets to point out his Quran and his prayer rug and all of these other Islam artifacts that were inside of his place, kind of showing, see, this guy was an extremist. He was an Islamic extremist, and that's who did this. That just smells so completely staged. The Israelis obviously want Americans to hate Middle Easterners so that we just continue waging war over there on their behalf. So that one seems really staged. The second one in Vegas is kind of an anomaly. I mean, you've got this active duty Green Beret who's been special forces for 18 years, a decorated soldier. And he's talking about, then there's these leaked emails of him being a whistleblower about anti-gravity machine, like UFOs or aircrafts. And there's a lot of stuff that's just not adding up. But it seems to me like the two events would be somewhat connected. I mean, as you mentioned, Fort Bragg is known, it's synonymous for PSYOPs here in the United States. It is the home of the PSYOP operations. They started it in the 50s, where they wanted to consolidate all of their PSYOP, their research, their all of their missions. Everything comes out of Fort Bragg. And it also happens to be where Special Forces is trained for the Army. So all the Green Berets are out of Fort Bragg as well. And you've got both guys connected to Fort Bragg. You also have Ryan Ruth, the guy who tried to assassinate Donald Trump the second time, who was hiding in the bushes at the golf course, also very connected to Fort Bragg, had been to Fort Bragg 147 times in 4 years, and he was never active duty. He was never in the military at all. So what was he doing at Fort Bragg? So there's a lot of stuff that isn't adding up. And I think there's a lot of, like what we saw after the first Trump assassination attempt, they tried to say Iran did it. If you remember that, Iran was behind. Iran somehow got this kid. And Iran was the one that was trying to stage all of these assassination attempts. Clearly these events, there's something extremely suspicious going on. It smells like a psyop on the American people. It really does, where they then take these events and then try to connect them to an enemy, Iran or ISIS. And then they're trying to say ISIS is Palestine, even though Palestinians fight ISIS, Hamas fights ISIS. But average people don't know that. They don't know the differences. So they just use all of this stuff. And it just seems like these are all operations to get us to continue staying in war, especially when the guy outside of the Trump Tower was a Trump supporter and an Elon Musk supporter. Why would he blow up a Tesla in front of Trump Tower? And then I just think maybe something went wrong there, but they were hoping to maybe use that also and stage it towards something in order to keep Trump and the MAGA crowd, the America First crowd, rabid about staying in war and funding war that the military-industrial complex and Israel wants us to stay in. I mean, that's what it feels like. From the gut, that's what it feels like.
I felt myself that Trump was the target of both of these events, one of them against his own property, but the other definitely targeted at his ascent back into office to toxify the atmosphere, to force him down certain roads. But he doesn't seem to see it that way, at least publicly. He seems to have bought the FBI narrative. I mean, anyone that emanates out of the PSYOP Central at Fort Bragg, and anyone who's trying to keep the United States in Syria, in its military bases there, which are currently being reinforced, seems to me they're aimed at Trump or aimed at putting Trump behind the 8 ball. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if in a couple of weeks we find out that the guy that blew himself up outside of Trump Tower was paid by Russians. I mean, that's what they're gonna come out with, that story somehow connected to the Russians, and see what the Russians were trying to do to you, Trump. They tried to kill you. See Elon Musk. So we've got to stay in Ukraine. We got to keep funding it. We got to send billions of dollars. I mean, it would not surprise me whatsoever if that narrative comes out. So all of this I do think is aimed at the anti-war sentiment that Trump ran on, that MAGA supports, that people who are America first want the United States to start focusing on the American people. And I think that all of these assassination attempts and attacks, it feels like they're all aimed at keeping Trump in line with that and trying to gaslight the American people into suddenly saying, never mind this whole anti-war stuff. War, we need more war. We're under attack. We need war.
Fascinating, as always. We're not going out of business, Kim, those of us in the commentating line of trade. There's been enough material just today to keep this show going for hours, and I wish we could talk to you for longer. Kim Iversen, host of the Kim Iversen Show, a must-watch for anyone interested in American and world events. Thanks for joining us. Is Elon Musk a hero or a villain? Get voting. 26,855 of you have voted already. It's pretty overwhelmingly a villain, except on Twitter. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls right up to the hour, starting with Jim in Colorado on Musk. Wait for it. I'll be right back.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the MOATS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Well, as you've just heard, the podcast is breaking all records. We're now in the top 10 in Greece, Morocco, and Hong Kong this week. We're in the top 20 in Malaysia, the top 30 in Japan, and South Africa too. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen. Now, you can also listen to the weekly podcast via the MOATS.tv website. Jim in Colorado on Musk. Jim, fire away.
Hi, George. Okay, what a treat to follow Kim. You were talking about the H1B1 in part of your conversation with her. Amazon wants 4,000 warehouse workers to come in on the H-1B1. Now, of course, the H-1B1 was allegedly for skilled workers where we couldn't fill those skilled positions. And now we're getting down. Well, Amazon, all you had to do was be able to lift weights and be a marathon runner to keep up with the work pace. And we have people who can do that here.
Exactly.
And he threatened, Musk threatened Social Security. Okay, this has been going on for years now. That people associated with the Republican Party and people like him, and the Democrats have been silent. Okay, the big fight here is the Bannon Trumpers and the Musk Trumpers. Now they're having, the Democrats are invisible. And they're the party of Roosevelt and Social Security. They're not saying anything. And it's pretty disgusting.
It is, as I said weeks ago, Jim, this is the battle for Donald Trump, isn't it? Bannon and the MAGA crowd versus Elon Musk and the Vivek fellow. These are two wings of the movement, and actually they're diametrically opposed in their view of the world. One of them is put America first, and Trump and Vivek, they'll put anybody first as long as they make a buck.
Sure, like Trump was on the TV over the last week talking about his friendship with the Adelson family. Okay, he got $100 million to move from Sheldon Adelson. He got $100 million to move the embassy to Jerusalem, and he did it. That's pretty good service, And the wife is even crazier. She keeps asking, and Trump is saying, she keeps asking. She wants the Golan Heights. We got her that. She wants more and more, and he keeps giving it to her. They ought to make it the 51st state.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, why not relocate it in, I don't know, Colorado, Oregon, somewhere like that. Jim, thanks very much indeed for that call. Now, you can make comments on YouTube. If you scan the QR code now, you can leave a comment. I'll read it out. Too Tough says Musk is a Zionist and he's aiding Nazis in Ukraine with his Starlink. And Braveheart Scotland says Musk is a South African white supremacist, sticking up for Robinson, the drug dealer, and he lists his birthplace as Ireland to get past customs. Utter fraud, and he beats up kids. And Aquila McCann says Elon changed his views once he visited Israel and had a walk with Netanyahu. And I'd rather be Trikin says Musk is a Zionist tool, as are those who have funded Musk, and most high tech is also tech from the Department of Defense, DARPA, NSA, CIA, etc. And Maria Heredia says, I appreciate X, but Musk needs to recognize that he's never said one word about Palestine and Syria, but he has no hesitation to promote and protect Israel. It's very unfair. Well, Maria, it's about positivity versus negativity. Let's go to Oxford in England, where Zeb wants to talk about the grooming scandal. Go ahead, Zeb.
Good evening, George. So I used to work for Thames Valley Police in the control room, and I've been born and raised in Oxford, so I have a bit of background information about the grooming scandal in Oxford. What's interesting is that there were certainly police failings, but it's for complicated reasons, multiple reasons. But primarily, cuts to police funding meant that police are stretched. That leads to empathy fatigue when they are going from job to job. And so there was an attitude where there was a negative attitude towards working class white girls. And this is something about the culture we don't discuss, where working class girls have always been seen as chavs. We've conveniently sort of brushed past this narrative in our history, where, if you remember from the way we depict people like Jade Goody and other, chavs were portrayed as promiscuous, hypersexual, having multiple fathers, having several kids and claiming benefits. And to give you an example of this, so I worked with one colleague who was the missing person coordinator.
Zeb? Oh my goodness, what a pity. Zeb, that was getting very, very interesting. Please call back. Now, if you're watching on TikTok tonight, thanks for the 44,000 likes so far on the live stream. Let's double that in the next 10 minutes, if you please. Is Elon Musk a hero or a villain? That's tonight's poll. You can vote on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. And 27,000 now have voted. On Telegram, 25% say Elon Musk is a hero. On X, 43% say that he is a hero. On the YouTube community poll, 31%. And on the YouTube stream, 23% think he's a hero. Let's go to the northwest of England, where Deborah from Blackpool wants to talk about Musk. Go ahead, Debs.
Hi, George. I know the things about the grooming gangs. I actually have some personal stuff from family members who've been affected by it. And what's actually worrying me, George, is all this about Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk blowing it up. I don't know what his agenda is, but the question I'd like to ask you, George, because I agree with you in mostly everything, one football team, but is it true that Gordon Brown sent a memo to the DPP when Keir Starmer was in charge, and it was about the grooming gangs not to prosecute or get
to go easy? Yeah, well, of course. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Deborah. I'll let you back in. One of the problems is, inexplicably, the DPP's office have lost the records of so many crucial episodes in Keir Starmer's tenure as the Director of Public Prosecution. So whether there is a memo or ever was a memo, we'll never know, because, hey, the records are missing. Just like Theresa May lost the records that were given to her by the Tory MP Geoffrey Dickens in the 1980s. They were lost. Look, I'm in no doubt whatsoever that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dirty, despicable perverts who prey on children, who prey on young girls. And I have no doubt at all that these exist across all groups in our society, all ethnic groups, all classes, from the top, from the palace, right down to the streets. And I have no doubt whatsoever that politicians covered it up for their own reasons. In Labour's case, so as not to lose votes in a community that they once were completely dominant in, namely the Asian and Muslim population. I've got no doubt about both those things. That's why I'm calling, and my party members in Rochdale Council are about to achieve, because Labour surely cannot oppose our motion. I mean, are the Labour councillors in Rochdale going to vote against a motion for an independent public inquiry into the grooming scandal and the cover-up? They'd be very ill-advised if they do. So I want that independent public inquiry. I want those groomers that haven't been jailed yet to be jailed, and I want the politicians that covered it up to be jailed also. Last word to you, Deborah.
Well, George, what would you advise me? Because, like I told you previously, Labour MP here, that if I voted Labour after having a crooked Tory, and I didn't want Starmer to get in because I had visions, like you said, two cheeks of the same backside, and the whole lot of them are, George. We need someone like you to represent, because you know it, and have the likes of Maggie Oliver, you know, people that have got all the documents, that, like yourself, you know, we need someone like you to represent.
Yeah.
And
well,
I'll
tell you what, Deborah, you need to be our candidate in Blackpool. Join the Workers' Party of Britain. Let's go to Panama and talk with Donna, another great caller, on Musk. Go ahead, Donna.
Well, congratulations on your tremendous success, George. I wanted to say that the wonderful Roger Waters, the beloved rock star, posted a poignant video on Twitter, on X, the other day. It got 1.5 million views, and then Elon Musk took it down, and he's supposed to be against censorship. That's one thing. Another thing I want to ask you, I and most of your audience, or a lot of your audience, I think, probably do not understand, how, first of all, what is a PSYOP and how does it work? In other words, how, if you're suggesting that somehow either those men in Las Vegas and New Orleans either did not exist or something like that, or they did exist. Well, if they did exist, and I ask this about every alleged PSYOP, how did the government or whoever, Fort Bragg, whoever, get them to be willing to sacrifice themselves for what you and Kim were talking about?
It's such a very good question, Donna. The short answer is I don't know, but there are a number of alternate possibilities. First of all, people's identity can be stolen. I mean, conveniently, perhaps, the guy in the cyber truck in Las Vegas was burned beyond all recognition. Although, as happened on 9/11, his passport miraculously survived the flames. His ID was found more or less intact, although his entire being was charred beyond recognition and he could not be identified. The DNA that they took from him did not match his child, which either means the child was not his, which of course is a possibility, or it means the DNA did not belong to the person whose ID was found in the car. The body and the ID were two different people. And we need to know the answer to these things. WikiLeaks have just dumped a lot of files. I'm looking forward to harvesting them myself on all kinds of things, like the FBI involvement in the Las Vegas hotel shootout, if you recall it, a few years back, which killed a very significant number of people and went on for hours. I always was suspicious of that story, and I suspect after I've read the WikiLeaks cables on it, I'm going to be even more suspicious of it. So who was the body in the car? Was it the Green Beret Special Forces still serving duty soldier from Fort Bragg? Was it him at all? And if it was him, how was he prevailed upon to commit suicide in front of a Donald Trump tower in an Elon Musk car when all the evidence is he was pro-Trump and pro-Elon Musk? That makes no sense at all. Now, the guy in New Orleans with the upside-down ISIS flag, which it seems was never on the back of the truck, but was photographed on the ground, but on a pole. Was there a pole with a flag attached to it inside the vehicle? Seriously? And why was it upside down? This man has no previous as a Muslim in the New Orleans area at all. Nobody knows him. He didn't go to a mosque. He had no online presence as an Islamist fanatic. So, if he was he, when did he become converted to ISIS? And when did ISIS become an enemy of the United States, when it is an ally of the United States in Syria, as it was previously and may soon be again in Iraq, and as it was in many other theaters in the world? So there are more questions than answers, Donna, as I'm sure you'll agree. But lovely to talk to you. Thanks for that. Is Elon Musk hero or villain? Get voting. You've got about 45 minutes. It's quite important that we get the biggest vote in possible. The only one where Musk is competitive in this poll is on his platform of Twitter. Now, a very successful podcaster of the right, moderate, reasonable, small c conservative, a Bitcoin wizard, Peter McCormack, the host of the Mr. Obnoxious podcast, is up after the break. I myself was interviewed by Peter just the other week, and it's going great guns. If you haven't watched it, if you'll forgive me, I commend it to you. Let me take a quick break, and then Peter McCormack, Mr. Obnoxious, is up next. Stay tuned.
You know, and it's a very, thank you for, you know, I'm a big fan of your show, Gigi. Great debate, great. And I'm Scottish. I'm very passionate about what's happening there, you know. I had a great mom. She was Scottish, Mary McLeod. She taught me well. She taught me well at everything, including golf. I love Scotland, and I love the Scottish food. It's great food. I said to Melania, you know, haggis. Look at that. What's more Scottish than that? Me. I am that haggis. She said, what, thin-skinned and full of crap?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Peter McCormack, amongst many other things, is a football club owner, Real Bedford, and I believe they're destined for the top. Their women's team are already breaking records, winning leagues and titles. He's a good fellow. I urge you to check him out. He goes under the name of Mr. Obnoxious, though, frankly, he's not obnoxious at all. Peter, good to see you again. Our interview seems to have gone quite well, but we'll let the audience judge that for themselves. I'm more interested in your take on Elon Musk's call for the overthrow of Nigel Farage. There was Nigel thinking he had $100 million in the post, and that he was basking in the ever greater public support that his Reform Party are enjoying, and bang, a guy who thought was his friend and benefactor has told him he needs to step down. He doesn't have the right stuff. What do you make of that?
I think it's pretty wild, George. I was sat there, I think just preparing for the football, and it popped up on my phone that the tweet he'd put out. And so, yeah, it's pretty wild. He's becoming a bit of a kingmaker, almost like he's becoming the president of the world, and is getting involved in politics from country to country. So I would say with great power comes great responsibility. I think Nigel's done some very good things for the Reform Party. I think it's a bit of a stab in the back for him. I'm not really sure is the right approach from Elon, but I don't know. It's weird. It's wild. It's hard to take him because we're in a very strange times at the moment. I don't know. What did you make of it?
Well, I think we are in strange times, and it's a reversal, a double reversal. First of all, Elon Musk is the champion of more Indian immigration into the United States, but he sure doesn't like South Asian immigration in Britain and wants to brand millions of people as sexual perverts. He is opposed to Steve Bannon, but loves Tommy Robinson. These are pretty contradictory political impulses. So maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's possible. He seems not to have known until today that Sir Jimmy Savile worked for the BBC. He expressed great surprise at that, which means he hasn't been following his news all that closely. Maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe he's in the middle of a nervous breakdown. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nigel's been put in a pretty tricky position with Tommy Robinson, because I think the Overton window on Tommy is definitely changing, and he was right about the rape gangs. He came forward about the rape gangs and raised awareness, but there's so much incorrect information that's being put online with regards to Tommy, where people have said he's been put in jail for speaking the truth. Really, he's been put in jail for contempt of court. If your only exposure really to Tommy is some tweets, and you maybe saw the Jordan Peterson interview, you might think he's been very, very unfairly treated. But I think a lot more of us have known Tommy for a decade plus, and we're aware of. There's been multiple things that he's been involved in, from mortgage fraud to convictions for assault, and so I think some of us might have a more complex view of Tommy, but I do think the Overton window is changing and shifting for him, and I think it'll be very interesting to follow his journey. But if you're Nigel Farage and you're leading reform and you want to challenge the elite Conservative Party and Labour Party, it's going to be very tricky if you invite Tommy to be part of the party, because there's certain people you're going to want to vote for you who might not seem like the right person. So it's a really complex situation that I think that Nigel's had to navigate. But I fully understand why they've said, look, Tommy isn't for our party. But I think at the same time, they could have come and said, look, it feels like the treatment of Tommy has been overly harsh. The rush to trial, the length of the sentence, the fact that he is in solitary. They could at least question that, while at the same time maybe pushing aside the issue of he should be in the party. But it's a very difficult thing to navigate, and I've spent a lot of time trying to correct people, or my friends in America asking me about the case and saying, Tommy's been put in jail for talking the truth about the rape gangs, which isn't the fact of what's happened. And so it's muddy in the waters.
Yeah, mortgage fraud, hard drug use, passport fraud, illegal immigration, multiple assaults, just the sort of fellow that should be on the benches in the House of Commons. But let's turn, Peter, to one thing that stands out in the current gloaming for me, is that neither Labour nor the Conservative Party are in any way visible or involved in what's happening. Somebody asked me today what I thought of Kemi Badenoch. I honestly had to do a double think before I could muster an answer, because what do I think of her? I think nothing of her. She's nothing. The Conservative Party is nothing. The Labour Party is struck dumb, while a member of the American government is slandering their leader and their ministers. Labour is nothing. The Conservatives are nothing. They've disappeared, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think politics has probably been one of the last areas of our society that has struggled to keep up with technology and adapting to social media, 24-hour news, the fact that people like you and I can put out a show that gets as many viewers as mainstream TV. And so they've struggled to keep up with that. And in doing so, they've they've kind of lost their relationship with the public because they don't have the authenticity that people have been craving in the world. So I think they spend most of the time really fearful of what they say if they get something quite wrong, when actually I think people are craving authenticity in people who do maybe say the odd thing wrong, because we're all fallible, we all make mistakes. And so I just think we're going through this kind of like transition at the moment in government where people are craving something else, which is, I think, why you're popular. I think why Nigel's been popular, why Reform have done very well. I also, with Labour, I'm very suspicious about what has been covered up. I think there are things that are going to come out in this that are going to be very damning for the party. I actually think Keir Starmer may be at risk of losing a seat in the coming months, perhaps a year. I mean, the party's performed absolutely dreadful since he came to power. But I think particularly on this issue, there appears to be some cover-ups, some hiding of information. What we really need is people to come forward, like the reporters who've been covering this, who have been kind of quite brave in some ways. I try and remember the guy. There's the guy at GB News, Peters, who's like bravely been tracking this story, and they've been doing it while the mainstream media hasn't really been covering it, and while the politicians have kind of been a bit quiet. Now we're starting to be able to come forward because it's like this huge demand, but it's a little bit late. It's like this should have been stuff that was acted on, years ago, George.
Yeah. Well, when I gave a speech in Parliament on the issue of grooming in Rochdale, it wasn't even reported by the Manchester Evening News, by Northern ITV or BBC. It was not reported anywhere. And I was naming names, Peter, of people who had been involved in these kind of foul actions and in the actions of covering them up. I mean, we're demanding a public inquiry in Rochdale, but I can already tell you what the results of it will be. The Labour grandees, members of Parliament, council leaders, top council officials, they deliberately covered it up. And no public inquiry will conclude anything else. But suddenly, we've got people in Pennsylvania opining on it. It's quite an extraordinary thing. No, I agree with you. I think Keir Starmer's jacket is on a shaky nail, don't you?
I do. I think I've got this like sneaky feeling Wes Streeting is trying to maneuver around him, knowing that there's going to be a position open up potentially in the coming year. I think he fancies that position. Look, Keir Starmer has been objective catastrophe for the country and Labour since he's come to power. I mean, as we spoke when we had our conversation, they don't really represent traditional Labour policies. They don't care about the working class. They represent a slightly left version of what the Conservatives have recently represented, which is high tax, high surveillance, high borrowing, lack of care about the liberties and freedoms of the people of this country. And so this is why we're seeing this populist uprising. I think he's done. I mean, what is it? I would question the Labour Party. What are you waiting for here? Like, how much more of a catastrophe how much more of a catastrophic start to his term as Prime Minister could he have? That what is it? 12% approval rating. 12% of people think he's done a good job since he's got into power.
His negativity ratings are -44. It's the lowest ever. It makes Liz Truss look like JFK. It is a thoroughgoing catastrophe. But Peter, let's turn to the US. In your Bitcoin days, you were more or less a weekly visitor and commuter to the United States. Trump is days away from coming in. How do you see that?
Well, he has to deliver. I mean, there's this demand for a hard shift with governments right now. We saw a hard shift in El Salvador, and Bukele's had a particularly successful first tenure. And he's, by maneuvering around the Constitution, managed to have a second term. But he's got, I think, the highest approval rate in the world by focusing on law and order, business, and the needs of the population, he has a very high popularity rating. Look at what's happening in Argentina. Again, that was a hard shift with Milei, trying to undo decades of high inflation and corruption. People are demanding a hard shift. Now, with Trump, backed by Elon, Vivek, RFK, they've promised a hard shift. So, he has to deliver now. He has to come and reduce the size of the state. He has to and not so much reduce the debt, but reduce the rate at which the debt's increasing. And he has to rein in these three-letter agencies. He has to rein in the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical-industrial complex. He has to do all these things he's promised. Otherwise, it will just have been hot air, and I think people will be let down. I think there's excitement. I mean, I was over there for New Year, and I spoke to a lot of people. A lot of people are excited about what Trump might bring to the country if he can actually deliver. But he has to deliver. It can't just have been false promises.
Yeah, of course, the governing party is being pulled in at least two ways. The Republicans are not all of the same stripe. There's a lot of rhinos still in the Congress, and they've just re-elected the biggest rhino of them all, Speaker Mike Johnson. The globalists like Musk, who has no country really. He spans the world. He's focused on the US now, but he's not an American. He may be a citizen now, I don't know, but he definitely wasn't an American just a few short years ago. And you've got the blue collar, MAGA faithful like Steve Bannon. And they're all fighting for Donald Trump's ear and direction. Who do you think is going to win that?
Well, Trump always wins. He demands loyalty. And if you're not loyal to what Trump wants, he will criticize you very significantly publicly, and he will try and get rid of you. So I think Trump will get what he wants. It's whether he has the right advisors around him. What I think has been interesting this time is that most of his advisors are people who have come from outside of traditional government, or they've shifted from what would really have been the left over to the Republicans. Tulsi Gabbard, RFK. I mean, look, RFK could have been the Democrat nominee. He might have beaten Trump if he had been. Obviously, the Democrats didn't want him. He went independent. Now he's joined Trump's team. I think ultimately what will win is Trump. Trump will get what he wants, but it's whether he delivers results. If it's just a raft of massive tax cuts, but no real change to the way the government borrows and no reduction in the size of the state, then he won't have delivered. But he will get to do what he thinks is right.
Now, having suffered the worst season of my entire life, it looked like Manchester United were back on the path to glory days this afternoon. If Harry hadn't blazed that over the bar, we'd have been talking about a very famous victory indeed. Tell us about Real Bedford, the team that you bought.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Unlucky with that one. So, 3 years ago, I bought one of my local football teams, a 10th tier team, Bedford FC, rebranded them to Real Bedford because you couldn't get a place more different from Madrid than Bedford. So I thought it'd be quite fun to give us a city name. But our goal was to get into the Football League. So we won the league title the first 2 years. We've gone from the 10th tier to the 8th tier. We're second in that league. We established a female side. They won the treble in their first season. They were top of the league. Unfortunately, not today because they didn't get to play because the weather called it off and the team is second one. But with the game in hand, if we win that, they'll be top. If they win the league again, they'll be up to the 3rd tier. So look, we've won 7 trophies in 2 seasons across men's and women's. We are on course for winning 4 more trophies this year. And we also recently took an investment from the Winklevoss twins. People will know them as the rowers in the Facebook film, The Social Network. They invested £3.6 million into the club. It's the largest investment in a non-league football club. And their objective is for me to turn this team into a Premier League team, which is quite the challenge. But right now, we're focused on the Football League. We'd like to become a full-time professional team in the Football League within another 8 years. So fingers crossed we'll do it. We've got to get you down to a game at some point, George.
Hail, hail, Real Bedford and Peter McCormack, Mr. Obnoxious. He's not obnoxious at all. He's a real smart, go-getting and highly successful guy. Thanks, Peter, for joining us. Let's take a quick break.
Thanks, George.
And then it's your calls right up to Gayatri's social media roundup. Stay tuned.
Mr. President, we got a report of a 50-foot woman marauding through Washington, sir.
Thank you, Captain. But I'm looking for a shorter woman, one who likes to take long strolls in the park and yell at minorities.
She's not looking for a date. She's terrorizing the city.
Is there a difference? A little levity. Call in the military.
We are the military, sir. Boy, we got here fast. We better do something, right? Shall I scramble the jets, Mr. President?
No thanks. I'll just take a muffin and some coffee. You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now we're approaching 60,000 likes on TikTok. Keep hitting that like button. See if we can get it to 100,000 by 9 o'clock. Riak is in Switzerland on Elon Musk. I told you, it's the global university of the airwaves. Go ahead, Riak.
Hello, George. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, very clear. Go ahead.
Okay, super. Just like to start off telling you some good words of admiration, your indefatigability and strong support of those who are oppressed throughout your career has been tremendously inspiring for myself and for many people that I know.
Thank you.
You're an asset to society. If anyone should have been knighted, it should be you. So I'm not sure if you would accept a knighthood, but yeah, I hope one day somebody.
Well, I wouldn't bow down in front of King Charles with a sword in his hand. Put it that way.
Okay, super. All right. The reason I'm calling is, although I agree with you on pretty much 95% of of your opinions and your thoughts, there was a comment made by Mr. McCormack just now, which I didn't agree with, and I hope you don't mind if I give you my thoughts on that.
Sure.
Okay, super. So he said he agreed that, he said that Tommy Robinson was correct in what he's been saying about the grooming gangs. And I'd like to point out that that's absolutely false. Tommy Robinson started, if you remember, joining the BNP and then starting off an offshoot called the EDL, which was a partnership with the JDL, the Jewish Defense League as well. And that was when Mr. Nick Griffin was offered a deal by the Zionists not to criticize Zionists, not to criticize the bankers, and to only attack Muslims or Islam. And that was the same line that Tommy has been pushing this whole time. He started off, if you remember, when the soldiers came back from, I think it was Afghanistan, they came to Wotton Bassett, and he started off demonstrating against them. Yeah. He claims he saw the Muhajirun people doing a demo there, so he came out in support of the troops. Mm-hmm. He only started to talk about grooming gangs when there was a group of Sikhs who got involved. There's a guy called Mohan Singh who started a group called the SAS, not the Special Air Service, but the Sikh Awareness Society. Their role was to spread propaganda that Muslims are grooming girls, taking Sikh girls in particular, and grooming them, converting them to Islam. And this is what he was pushing. So he tried to team up with Tommy Robinson, and that's why there was a group formed called the Sikh division of the EDL. And that was the new message that Tommy Robinson decided to push, the grooming gang narrative. Yes, there is some truth about the police ineptitude or the sort of oversight and neglect of innocent victims in Bradford and Rochdale and those places. But it's nothing to do with Muslims or Islam. If the perpetrators are Muslim, it's only because of their cultural links to Islam, being of a particular heritage. Yeah. So this is why I wanted to say that I disagreed with Mr. McCormack, him claiming that and there's one more thing.
You're right to, yeah. Go on.
You made a comment as well about the globalists and that Elon Musk is a globalist. I'd like to say, no, these are not globalists. These are actually Zionists. Their agenda, all of these people, they're aligned on one thing, that they have a Zionist mission. And that's what you see Musk is doing online as well. He's pushing a Zionist narrative. He's in bed with Netanyahu.
Well, he is now. He wasn't particularly before. I stick to globalist. Of course, he's a Zionist. Most powerful people in the world, in the West, are Zionists. But that's not the driving and central force in his character, in his mission, in my view. But he's a citizen of nowhere. His religion is money and power. As far as I know, he's not a religious person. I've never heard him talking about God or seen anything that he's ever written on religious, spiritual matters. But the point that you make is absolutely correct. There are Muslims who have been involved in disgraceful, foul, sinful, savage, criminal acts against young girls and young women. Of course, there are. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of such acts have been carried out by Roman Catholic priests. But that's not a reason to curse Catholics. It's not a reason to demand the deportation of all Roman Catholics from the country. It's an absurd proposition that because some Pakistani Muslims have been involved in dirty crimes against young girls and young women, that somehow the rest of the people of Pakistani origin in Britain somehow share the blame for that. I share no blame for such crimes committed by Roman Catholic priests. Why should my Pakistani friends share the blame for the actions of a small number of their overall millions in Britain? Why should they be blamed for that? Why should people be demanding that they be kicked out of the country? Most of them were born in this country. You can't kick out a citizen of this country on the basis that they share a skin color or they share a faith with a miscreant, a criminal, a foul pervert who has the same religion or who has the same color of their skin. So it's an entirely opportunistic campaign. I didn't see one word from Elon Musk about child abuse and even kidnappings amongst the Orthodox Jewish community in New York, pictures of which I saw. I didn't hear him say one word about the Jewish community in Guatemala, where girls were rescued from. Not one word. He hasn't said one word about the child abuse in the ranks of the clergy in the Roman Catholic Church. Not one word about it. This is about race for him. It's about religion for him and his determination to use anti-Muslim feeling to unleash a wave that will take him or take Robinson or take somebody to a certain place, to a place of greater power and influence. Well, I'm not going to be silent in the face of that. Here I stand. I can do no other. React, thank you for that call. Comments. Friendly Brilliant says, I don't like Musk. Jason Bermas has the goods on him. You should interview Jason Bermas. Well, I don't know. I've never heard of him, but we'll check it out. All of our law O2 says Elon wants to revive the legacy of Operation Paperclip and assume his role as Werner von Braun. I think his ambitions are greater than that. Piano Man says keep billionaires out of any government politics or influence. And Sparky sends us $5. Thanks, Sparky, we need it. Nerds shouldn't run society because they are socially inept by definition. And EM says, I'm so nervous. Something horrendous is going to happen here in the UK with all this racism whipping up rhetoric. I agree with you. It's a dangerous moment. Tony is in London on the grooming gangs. Go ahead, Tony.
Hiya, George. Just like to say it's a pleasure to speak to you, sir. You're a long political hero for me. Just 2 quick points, George.
Thank you.
The first one, these Muslim grooming gangs. Now, I'm against any paedophilia and all that. Know what I mean? It's a horrible, horrible thing. But they only seem to speak about the child abuse that's expedient for them. The media, I mean, George. Now, when this was happening, these grooming gangs in Rochdale, nothing got said because it was politically convenient for that not to come out at that time. Know what I mean? Yeah. Now they want they're pushing that story because what? Because of the Zionists and Muslims. There's another group of people in our society, George, that are very well capable of had paedophiles around them. Our own dear royal family. Our old King Charles, his mate, his spiritual mentor, as he said, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, is just and Mountbatten.
The former Archbishop of Canterbury, Mountbatten, who practically brought him up.
All sorts connected to the royal family, but no one wants to speak about that. The Parliament, Westminster, paedophile ring, but they had so many inquiries that just went down the drain. No one wants to talk about that. No, and I agree with you, George, when you said at the start of the show. There's white paedophiles in this country by far the most numerous, but no one wants to speak about that. They just want to aim it at the Muslims when it's convenient at them to do so. And there's Muslim grooming gangs, George. I'm not denying it, know what I mean? But there's also elite white grooming gangs. My other point, George, Elon Musk, I believe you said he wants to start having a stake in this country. I think he's already got a stake, George. He's part of a technocratic elite, apart with his mate Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, whose company Palantir has just got a big contract with the NHS, by the way. This is a data analysis company that basically spies on you, and it's just got a contract with the NHS. Elon, he's World Economic Forum stooge, and he wants biometrics, biometric IDs, digital currency, all of that they're trying to rush it in. They've already got a grip of this country, George. That's my opinion, mate.
Well, I'm sure you'll have voted villain, as the great majority of people have in our poll, which is now almost 30,000 strong. You're watching Mr. Musk. Tony, the point that you make is undeniable. From Prince Andrew to Earl Mountbatten and many other people in the royal circles over centuries, actually, have been involved in all kinds of foul behaviour. I myself was a victim of that kind of thing when I was 11 years old, and the perpetrator was a sergeant major in the Army Cadet Force, Royal Artillery Battery 2, based in Barry-Budden. But in his daytime job, he was the janitor of my school. There you go. Nick is in Los Angeles. He wants to talk about the FBI and Vegas. I'm all ears, Nick. I'm very interested in this case. Go ahead.
Hey, George. Happy New Year, and wonderful show as always. Yes, I discovered this week with these two events, the one in Vegas and the one in New Orleans, I stumbled across through various outlets, through social media, obviously, a British filmmaker, Chris Morris. I wondered if you were aware of him, and he made a film in 2019 called The Day Shall Come. But he did extensive research on the infiltration or the efforts of the FBI to recruit disenfranchised individuals, whether they be ex-military or whatever, people maybe with financial hardships, some reason for them to be indoctrinated, then to commit acts with obviously their training and grooming to then continue on the narrative of craziness, whether it be attached to some Muslim theme or some terrorist theme or whatever, but to send everybody into a state of panic and paranoia by these events occurring. So, and that's also even your friend Jimmy Dore, who we love, had a piece just within the last 24 hours where the same thing's been going on in Hollywood, where there have been FBI operatives have been infiltrating themselves into Hollywood with shows that are produced and the narrative and the stories that they're telling. And I just wondered if your audience were aware, if you were aware of Chris Morris and his work, that particular film. I think he had another film before that was equally successful. And it all makes sense. Any thoughts?
It does make sense, Nick, and I'm aware, of course, of Morris's work, and we'll try and showcase some of that as the weeks go on and this issue rumbles on, as I'm sure it will, unless Donald Trump has decided to throw a carpet over it, sweep it under the rug, but that would be very unwise of him, in my opinion. They're out to get Donald Trump, and the more sunlight he can have shine upon these dark corners, the better it will be for him as well as for the rest of us. I don't know why the New Orleans guy committed suicide, murder-suicide, because he must have known that he would be dead at the end of it. I don't know what persuaded him, convinced him to do that. Is it hypnosis of the kind that would appear to have been used on Sirhan Sirhan, the supposed murderer of Senator Robert Kennedy in 1968, and about which he's not been able to tell us, but we know enough to know that he was there in that kitchen that night, but did not know that he was there, did not know what he was doing. And of course, what he was not doing was killing RFK, who was killed from behind, not from the front, which was where Sirhan Sirhan was. It's all very deep and murky water, and I hope that we can clean it up. Thanks, Nick, in Los Angeles. Now, look, I've got a real fun event coming up. It's not a demonstration. It's not a protest. It's a rally. It's a look ahead to the 20th of January, when we're gathering outside the American Embassy in London to celebrate regime change. Not because we think the next regime's necessarily going to be better, but because we're delighted to see the old regime of Biden and Harris going out. So, US Embassy in London, 20th of January at midday. Speakers to be announced. Regime change. Good riddance day. Call it what you will. Now, my other show, Have It Out with Galloway, will be live, coming to your screen on Tuesday. Here's what it's all about. Watch this. Join me every week to Have It Out with Galloway. We discuss the great issues of the day and occasionally the odd philosophical meandering through the meaning of life. You can be on the show by contacting us at our website, haveitoutwithgalloway.com. You can be the star of the show. Join me on Have It Out with Galloway. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
My guest on Have It Out with Galloway this week is Li Jingjing, our wonderful young Chinese woman, friend and regular guests on all of the shows that I have had. She is fantastic. If you've seen her on the mother of all talk shows, you already know that. And you can see her with me on Tuesday at 7 p.m. on my own YouTube channel on Have It Out with Galloway. Let's go to Gordon in Lewis on Musk and Trump. Go ahead, Gordon.
Morning, George. An exception with you. You closed me down the last time. You outside the Whitechapel Mosque in London a long time ago, and Pakistanis singing Gaelic and winning medals in Scottish modern music back in 1974 before you and a man called Guthrie. Do you remember the man called Guthrie, the Trades Union Congress? And along came you, the two greatest heroes that Dundee.
Guthrie?
Right, you'll know his name.
Guthrie, what was his first name? What was his name, Gordon?
It wasn't Billy.
Oh, gosh. We're losing.
Yeah,
go ahead, Gordon. You're back on the line. Go ahead, sir.
It sounds Billy, but I would just like to say to everybody listening tonight, and Galloway, bastion of truth, tore down Congress, the greatest voice that Britain's ever had in that House of Fools down in Westminster. Stand by the truth. Stick with the truth. We're going to press the reset and we're going to make it go forward. Thank you, George.
Yes,
Gentleman and a half.
God bless you, Gordon. Thank you very much indeed for that. I must get the full name of the man he was talking about, Mr. Guthrie, I thought he said. If someone in the back office can call him back and get that name, I'd like to know it. Is Elon Musk a hero or a villain? Well, Gayatri's here to sum it and the rest of it up. Gayatri, what's rattling?
I think villain wins it.
It wins it quite convincingly, except on Twitter.
How
suspiciously
convenient that he's a hero on Twitter. Well, the way Andrew Cole...
Your microphone, where is it? Don't worry.
I apologize.
You were being picked up on my microphone.
Okay, fantastic. Well, very quickly then. So the way Andrew Cole puts it, I can't quite put my finger on what it is about this billionaire political shapeshifter and new Trump lickspittle, but I suspect Musk might be primarily concerned with the best interest of Musk.
He might be, although to be fair to him, I mean, he has spent a lot of money and Twitter did become a lot more free than it was in the old regime, but that freedom would seem to be slipping through everyone's hand at the moment, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and people do remember, these good things that he's done in the past, but now have seen the other side of him, especially in the last hours. Goodness gracious. Yeah. Well, on a positive note...
Imagine how Nigel Farage feels.
Yeah.
He thought he was getting a $100 million check from Elon Musk. Instead, he got a demand for his resignation.
Incredible. Well, the Bakerman says the establishment are going apoplectic about him. So surely he has to be a hero. I wonder what smears they will come up with. So that's one way to look at it. Theresa Kelly says, to witness so many in this world foolishly ignoring all the horrible things Zionist war profiteer Elon Musk has done in pursuit of money and power is Twilight Zone territory. Thank God his body bag count in Palestine and in Ukraine due to his Starlink technology, etc., will not be ignored on Judgment Day.
Amen.
And Paul Brown says, child of apartheid now styling himself as the leader and bankroller of the ultra-right endorsing fascism worldwide. And the way Darren Alevi puts it is that, well, he's basically just a snake oil salesman, a con man, a lot of people describe him as. That's how he appears to be, because as you said, what is he a citizen of? Yes, he's from South Africa. Yes, he left it a long time ago. He's now in the US, but he doesn't really carry the American passport. He's really just a globalist snake oilsman, isn't he?
He's the perfect globalist. I think he's more than a snake oil salesman in the sense that he has greater ambitions than selling you snake oil. And I'm not sure he's the one licking Trump's boots. It might even be the other way around. I think that we will find. But the H-1B1 visa thing, where Trump was 100% opposed to these visas, American jobs for American citizens and so on. Musk demanded them, and Trump capitulated. He endorsed the Musk view rather than the Bannon view. It's a fascinating dichotomy that is emerging. When we get there, if we do, in the coming year, we'll seek to interview all concerned. We'll certainly interview Steve Bannon. I hope that we can interview Elon Musk, and maybe even Donald Trump if he'll see us.
Yeah, that would be great, Trump. In Mar-a-Lago, Martin Prince says not only has much of the population lost the ability and willingness to rebel against their own exploitation, they have now been brainwashed enough to celebrate billionaires as heroes. So the fact that he's a billionaire, it doesn't really add up to people for him to come out as a hero. Ali Merakeb says, the richest person on earth, a hero, that is not conceivable even if it was a movie, which is very interesting.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's a third of the people in this poll, I mean, I'm doing the average, a third of the people in this poll think that the billionaire Elon Musk is a hero. So what's the attraction? Not sure. Is that coming through in the social media feedback?
Well, the people are thinking that it will eventually come through, that we just have to wait it out. I mean, the 20th is only 15 days to go. So
15 days?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Overheads quotes Confucius by saying, to be wealthy and honored in an unjust society is just a disgrace. And that's the contrast that they're putting between Elon Musk and today's world. Asif Khan says, 100% he's a villain. Question, George, if the Israelis manage to annex the entire West Bank next year, will it be the fault of the corrupt Abbas, who is openly killing his own people, considering he's the one who signed Palestinians to ICC? Should they not investigate him?
Well, all of the above. It will be the responsibility of everyone who either actively or passively sells the Palestinian population of the West Bank. It will be the responsibility of the nonagenarian President Abbas, whose term ran out at least a decade ago, but he's still calling himself the president. It will be the responsibility of the leaders of the Arab regimes alongside. It will be the responsibility of the fools, the useful idiots who couldn't see past the end of their nose in recent events in Syria. It will be the responsibility, above all, of Zionism and the people who've supported it and empowered it. And that actually adds up to every single leader in the Western world, bar none. I mean, even Orban, who is on the Ukraine war and some other things, a very independent guy, tells the EU where to go, tells the US where to go. On Israel-Palestine, he could not be a more bloodthirsty hawk. So it's pretty much every leader in the Western world will be responsible for that if it happens.
If it happens, indeed. It is day 457 of the Gaza genocide. And it is today that once again they have made the Indonesian hospital in Gaza, which is located very near to the Jabalia refugee camp, impossible to operate. They have blocked supply of water and foods and basically forcing and ordering the doctors, the staff to leave. But they once again refused to obey these orders, wanting to stay put with their patients and basically creating another scene. As we have discussed before, Dr. Hussam Abu Safia is still...
They've acknowledged that they have him. For a couple of days, they denied that they had him, opening the probability that they had already murdered him. Yeah. And other eminent doctors from that hospital and others have been murdered by the occupation force. And one eminent doctor from that hospital was raped to death. Yeah. Nobody's that interested in that particular rape. Elon Musk has no view on a leading doctor being raped to death in an Israeli dungeon. The BBC doesn't care about it either. Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, none of them care about it at all. So Abu Safia's fate is the responsibility of every right-thinking person in the world. Raise your voice for Dr. Abu Safia and demand his safe release from the Israeli prison system. Sorry, Gayatri, what else have you got?
Amen to that. Well, just before I go and we go to a call in Canada, I just want to call upon the audience that we have this day left to sign the petition to call for a general election, which is very timely with Elon Musk's interventions. We have passed the 3 million signature landmark, and so amazing. We can just add a bit more to that, can't we?
Sign the petition to call a general election in Britain. Of course, the petition does not have the power to create a general election. Nobody does. The only way we can change things is to force the Labour MPs looking down the barrel of certain defeat in their hundreds at the general election to overthrow the Prime Minister, have a vote of no confidence in him. That is what they should do. Thanks, Gayatri. We'll go for chips after this. Federico is in Canada, but wants to talk about Russia and Ukraine. Federico, welcome. What do you want to say?
Hello, George. Russia and Ukraine is a lost war. We all know that Russia has taken over, and that's not out of discussion. Of course, the mainstream media will want us to believe that it's Ukraine who's winning. It's stupid. But okay, George, I wanted to ask you, there's greed, corruption, lies, plutocracy, and a world that has been politicized by the power of the strong. I remember that Plato with Thrasymachus and Socrates talked about it 2,300 years ago when they said, what is justice? And Thrasymachus, I believe, answered, is what is in the interest of the strong. It seems to me that 2,300 years later, things are still the same. Now, I wanted to ask you, is there a mechanism, a political mechanism that you in the UK, as a representative that you are for your constituency and for us viewers, that as I'm applying here in Canada, is to find a political mechanism, democratic mechanism, which can be called the referendum, in order for you, George, to have this initiative, to have 10 or 12 points, in order to ask your people in the UK, like European people would do with Germany and the European Union, in order to ask their people in a referendum, what is it that they are against the anti-democratic policies that are ruining Germany and Europe right now, and according to war. Is there a mechanism that you could use, George, in order, like the referendum, in order to ask the peoples and not the politicians and the elites what will be the destiny of Europe in every country in the world? That's my question. Best regards, George.
Well, there isn't, is the short answer. There is no such mechanism. Citizens in Britain, it's not as bad in some other places, but it is largely the case throughout the Western world, have the role in democracy of putting an X on a piece of paper once every 4 years or every 5 years. And that is the be-all and end-all of it. They have no other power. We cannot recall errant members of parliament, except in really exceptional circumstances, if they're sentenced to serve in a term of imprisonment, or if they are suspended by their fellow MPs for long enough. So by and large, MPs can be the most venal and corrupt, and many of them are, and we cannot recall them. They can defy the wishes of their electorate, and we cannot recall them. A leader in Parliament with all his powers of patronage, of promotion and demotion, of fancy trips abroad and lucrative assignments of all kinds, is very difficult to challenge, and to challenge successfully. We have a Parliament of poodles who yap according to the instructions that they are given from the leader, and only in very exceptional circumstances. Will they revolt and overthrow their leader? In the Conservative Party, a state of total anarchy rules. The Conservative Party removed Theresa May, they removed Boris Johnson, they removed Liz Truss, they more or less removed Rishi Sunak so that he had to go into a disastrously early general election because they were about to get rid of him too. And they will get rid of this nobody, Mrs. Nobody, Kimmy Badenough, because she has not cut through and will not cut through. But they are running out of options. But Labour has a majority in Parliament of 174, and so nothing can be achieved except by voting. And that means that we have to vote. And we had elections scheduled for May, and Labour is seeking to cancel those elections in May. That's the state of British democracy. But we must vote, we must join political parties that are advocating the kind of direct democracy that you identify. We cannot call a referendum. We get a referendum when Parliament votes for the referendum. And even then, the result of the referendum is not actually binding on the Parliament which gave the referendum in the first place. We had a referendum in 2014 on Scottish independence. No doubt we'll have to have another one at some point in the next year, 2, 3, 4, because you can't just say you get one chance and the rest of time you'll never get another chance. We said once in a generation, and we're getting up to that stage now. It's been 11 years since the last referendum. A generation in political terms would be 20 years or slightly less. So there will be another referendum on Scottish separatism. But we got the referendum on membership of the EU, the Brexit referendum, only because they thought with the entire massed ranks of the British establishment demanding a no vote, that they would win it. And we confounded them. So no, we have no direct democracy. We have the right to elect MPs, and too few people made the right decisions on July the 4th when we last had that opportunity. Last call, I think, will be Terence in Corby, always worth hearing. Welcome, Terence. Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy hog, my name, Mr. Galloway. A bit belated, but nonetheless, happy hog to you and your family. 2 points, actually. Your introduction was blisteringly honest and always is, and it took me back to the way you say about grooming gangs. Overwhelmingly white focus on Asian and the sort of social classes that haven't got any power. And it took me back to somebody you knew well. How well you knew him, I don't know, but you certainly knew him. When Cyrilsmith died in 2012, all the establishment knew he was a no-good, foul individual that did what he did to children. Horrible, horrible man. However, the state went threatened, changed its tack, and then they invented the prevent strategy in schools, where they made teachers across this land look out for terrorist sightings, or a child may say something. Invariably, that was headed for the ethnic minority groups. There's no doubt about that. Prevent was created for that very issue. That's my first point. My second point is the great war correspondent Jeremy Bowen, who dug a little trench with a blue spade and lay in it in the Ukraine, and was a war correspondent until a Ukrainian woman took a picture of him in his little crater he created, and she might have got Bono raising her hand in a subway. What I want to know is, what's your opinion on the lies have been told in The Guardian? A battalion of Koreans being killed in the last month, apparently. Where's the proof? Where's the Jeremy Bowens? Where's the Bonos telling us this? There are Russians dying as we speak. It kills me to think that Russians and Ukrainians are dying when all they want in the West is the MIC, the military-industrial complex, to make the Zionists richer, blood capitalist, more capitalism. And I'd like your opinion on the first one and the second one, if you don't mind, Mr. Galloway. And again, happy hog.
Yes, thank you for that. As always, Terence. Not only did they not punish Sir Cyril Smith, they made him a Knight of the Realm. And David Steele, giving evidence, Sir David Steele, Lord David Steele, giving evidence to the child sexual exploitation inquiry in Parliament, admitted that he had known 5 years before he nominated Cyril Smith for a knighthood about Cyril Smith's foul paedophilic past. Now, that should have meant that David Steele went to prison rather than into the House of Lords, because that is what you call a cover-up of someone who was a rapacious abuser of children, and children of the most vulnerable kind, in care homes, prisoners in care homes, that he would enter and sexually abuse them on the grounds of these care homes. Children who already had nothing, no mother, no father, no family, living under the protection of the state and were being raped by a member of Parliament, by the mayor of Rochdale, Sir Cyril Smith, who ain't no Muslim, bruv. There are lots of Muslim abusers, even more Catholic priest abusers, even the occasional sergeant major in the Army Cadet Force. I have the scars to tell you. It's our job to protect all children and young people from all kinds of sexual exploitation and premature sexualization and force-feeding of woke notions of the 57 varieties of human sexuality. It's our job. And it's our job to root out anyone who covers up the abuse of children. And when we don't, we should be hunted. And that's why I'll hunt the cover-up, particularly in Rochdale, for the rest of time. And I say now to the Labour councillors, who are the overwhelming majority for now on the Rochdale Borough Council, don't dare vote down our motion. You will destroy Labour, not just in Rochdale. You will destroy it everywhere in the Northwest, and you may contribute to its total destruction across the land. If you cover up a national, independent public inquiry into cover-up, then you will be compounding your crime against the people. And none of you will survive. I warn you now, no Labour councillor in Rochdale who votes against a public inquiry into the grooming scandal and cover-up in Rochdale will survive. Not one of you. You will all be voted out. Mark my words on that. As to Ukraine, it breaks my heart that brother is fighting and killing brother on the Dnieper, in the Donbass, in Ukraine. Not for anything in the interests of the people of Ukraine, because they're patsies. They've been put up as patsies to be killed for the empire of Joseph Biden. Can you think of a more inglorious, dishonorable thing to die for than NATO and Joe Biden? I've gone over my time. I'm very sorry about that. But there's only time to tell you that I will be at a family wedding on Wednesday, so we'll have a stand-in host for the mother of all talk shows. I'm not going to tell you who the stand-in host is, because he's really big news, and you're going to love him. So tune in at 7 o'clock UK time on Wednesday for the midweek mother of all talk shows, and catch Have It Out with Galloway on Tuesday at the same time. Thank you.